The stars looked different from every planet. Thorne had visited enough of them to know that with certainty. From this observation deck on Nexus Station, the central hub of the galactic dominion, they appeared cold and distant, like tiny pinpricks in the fabric of space, just like the emotions he kept buried deep within himself. Thorne adjusted the neural implant at the base of his skull, a permanent reminder of what he was, an apex predator. The elite human warriors feared throughout the galaxy, trained from childhood to be the perfect killing machines. The implant enhanced his already superior strength and reflexes, but its primary purpose was control. The Dominion couldn't risk their weapons developing consciences. "Commander Thorne," a voice called from behind him, "the Council is ready for you." Thorne turned his face, an emotionless mask, as he nodded to the Vexari messenger. The thin, blue-skinned alien kept a respectful distance, its multiple eyes never making direct contact. Fear. It was always fear that Thorne saw in the eyes of other species. He had grown accustomed to it. "I'll be there," he said, his voice low and controlled. The Vexari scurried away, clearly relieved to be dismissed. Thorne took one last look at the stars before heading toward the council chambers. His heavy boots echoed through the pristine corridors of the station, other beings pressing themselves against the walls to let him pass. An apex predator was never summoned unless something needed to be eliminated. Everyone knew that. The council chambers were vast, a semicircular room, with seats rising in tiers occupied by representatives of the 17 dominant species that formed the Galactic Dominion. At the center stood High Chancellor Vrex, a Draxian with scaled skin and penetrating yellow eyes. "Commander Thorne," Vrex's voice boomed across the chamber, "we have a mission of utmost importance." Thorne stood at attention, his posture perfect, eyes forward. "I am ready to serve, High Chancellor." "A threat has emerged to the stability of the Dominion." Vrex continued activating a holographic display. The image of a woman appeared, rotating slowly above the central platform. Human with dark hair pulled back from her face, eyes intense and determined. "This is Dr. Ilara Voss," Chancellor Vrex explained, his voice dripping with contempt. Once a respected xenobiologist, working for the Dominion Science Division, now a dangerous radical spreading seditious ideas. Thorne studied the hologram, memorizing every detail of his target. Standard procedure. "What is her crime?" he asked, though it wasn't required. Apex predators didn't question assignments. A ripple of murmurs spread through the council. Vrex's eyes narrowed slightly. "Dr. Voss has been conducting unauthorized research into human neurophysiology. She claims to have discovered evidence that contradicts our understanding of your species." The Chancellor's clawed hand waved dismissively. "More importantly, she's been sharing her findings with fringe groups across 3 sectors, inciting unrest." Counselor Mira, one of the few Lumari representatives, leaned forward. Her luminescent skin pulsed with soft light as she spoke. "Dr. Voss believes that humans are not the natural predators we've always understood them to be. She claims your species' evolution as apex hunters is a myth, that your true evolutionary advantage is actually—" She seemed to struggle with the word empathy. A dangerous falsehood that undermines the very foundation of the Dominion's security protocols. Thorne kept his expression neutral, but something inside him stirred. Such a claim was indeed radical. For centuries, humans had been valued by the Dominion, precisely because they were predators, dangerous but useful when properly controlled. That was why the Apex Predator program existed. That was why Thorne existed. "Her research must be destroyed," Chancellor Vrex continued. "All copies, all data. And she must be eliminated before her ideas spread further. The stability of the Dominion depends on it." "Where is she?" Thorne asked. "Our intelligence suggests she's established a research facility on Erebus in the Outer Rim, a desolate mining planet abandoned after the ore depletion 50 years ago." A star chart appeared, replacing Dr. Voss's image. "It's remote, lawless. She has supporters, fanatics, who believe her theories. Expect resistance." Thorn nodded. When do I leave? Immediately. You'll have access to whatever resources you require. Failure is not an option, Commander. This woman threatens everything we've built. I understand. Thorn bowed slightly, the gesture required when accepting a mission directly from the High Council. One more thing, Chancellor Vrex added as Thorn turned to leave. Dr. Voss is clever. She may try to confuse you with her theories, may attempt to undermine your programming. Remember your purpose, Apex. Remember what you are. I know what I am, Thorn replied, his voice steady. A weapon. A predator. He had never been anything else. As he left the council chambers, Thorn felt an unfamiliar sensation. A slight hesitation. A whisper of doubt. He pushed it aside. Doubt was a luxury that Apex predators could not afford. He had his mission. Dr. Alara Voss would be dead within the week. The preparation for the mission followed Thorn's usual methodical protocol. He studied everything available about his target, her academic history, personal records, known associates. Dr. Alara Voss had been a rising star in the Dominion Science Division, specializing in comparative neurophysiology across species. Her early work had been instrumental in refining the neural implants used to control human apex predators, ironically enough. 3 years ago, something had changed. Her research took a different direction, focusing exclusively on human neural patterns. Then, 18 months ago, she disappeared, taking a significant amount of classified data with her. The official story was that she had suffered a mental breakdown, standard procedure when the Dominion needed someone to vanish from public consciousness. Thorn's scout ship, the Shadow Rift, was small, but equipped with the most advanced stealth technology in the Dominion. It was designed for one purpose, to deliver an apex predator to their target without detection. As he prepared for departure, he received one final data packet, the exact coordinates of Voss's facility, on Erebus gathered from an informant who had infiltrated her inner circle. The journey to the Outer Rim would take 4 days, even with the Shadow Rift's enhanced drive system. Thorn spent most of that time in meditation, focusing his mind on the mission ahead. But something kept interrupting his concentration, fragments of the council briefing replaying in his mind. Not the natural predators we've always understood them to be. Your true evolutionary advantage is actually empathy. Empathy. The concept was not unfamiliar to Thorn, but it was something he had been trained to suppress. Empathy was weakness. Empathy got in the way of doing what needed to be done. Yet here was a scientist claiming it was humanity's greatest strength. Absurd. Dangerous. The Shadow Rift dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Erebus system. The planet loomed ahead, a dull gray sphere with minimal atmosphere. Sensors indicated scattered settlements, remnants of the mining operations, but most of the surface was barren, hostile territory. Thorn guided the ship toward the coordinates he'd been given. The facility was supposedly hidden in a mountainous region built into the natural caverns that honeycombed the planet's surface. As he approached, he activated the ship's passive scanning systems, careful not to emit signals that might be detected. The scan revealed energy signatures consistent with a research facility, but something was odd. The output was too low for a facility of the size indicated in his intelligence. Either the information was wrong, or Dr. Voss was deliberately keeping her power usage minimal to avoid detection. Thorn landed the Shadow Rift 3 kilometers from the target location in a narrow canyon that would shield it from casual observation. He suited up in his combat armor, black lightweight, but stronger than steel, with built-in environmental protection and adaptive camouflage. His weapons were similarly advanced, a pulse rifle for ranged elimination, a molecular blade for close encounters, and various specialized tools for different scenarios. The surface of Erebus was as inhospitable as he'd expected. Low gravity, thin atmosphere, and temperature well below freezing. None of this bothered Thorn. His augmented physiology and armor could handle far worse conditions. He moved across the rocky terrain with practiced efficiency, every sense alert for signs of security systems or patrols. He found neither. No motion sensors, no automated defenses, not even basic perimeter alerts. It was as if Dr. Voss wasn't concerned about being found. That bothered Thorne more than any security system would have. People who were not afraid either had nothing to fear or had defenses you couldn't see. The entrance to the facility was disguised as a natural cave opening, but Thorne's enhanced vision detected the subtle signs of construction. He approached cautiously, weapon ready, expecting resistance at any moment. The entrance led to a tunnel roughly hewn from the rock, but reinforced with structural supports. Lights embedded in the ceiling cast a soft blue glow, illuminating the way forward. Thorne moved silently through the tunnel, which gradually widened into a more finished passage. The architecture was minimalist functional, not what he would expect from a radical's hidden base. It reminded him more of a research station, clean, organized, purposeful. He encountered his first person about 500 meters in a young man wearing simple clothing, carrying what appeared to be research equipment. Thorne pressed himself against the wall, his armor's camouflage blending with the surroundings. The man passed by, completely unaware of the death that stood just meters away. Thorne could have eliminated him easily. One less obstacle between him and his target. But unnecessary casualties created complications, and his mission was specific. Eliminate Dr. Alara Voss and destroy her research. He let the man pass. Deeper into the facility, Thorne began to see more signs of life. People moved with purpose through the corridors, most appearing to be researchers or simply technical staff. None were armed. None exhibited military training in their movements. This wasn't adding up. If Dr. Voss was the dangerous radical the council claimed, where were her fanatic supporters? Where were the defenses against the Dominion forces she must have known would come for her? Thorne accessed the facility systems through a data terminal using infiltration software to bypass security without triggering alarms. The layout appeared on his armor's heads-up display, a sprawling complex of laboratories, living quarters, and what seemed to be a central research hub. His target was most likely there. As he made his way toward the hub, Thorne began to notice something else that disturbed him. The people he observed, researchers, technicians, support staff, were from various species. Humans worked alongside Vexari, Lumari, even a few Draxians, all working together without the strict hierarchies that governed Dominion society, without the fear that normally accompanied interspecies interactions. The central hub was a large circular chamber with multiple workstations arranged around a central holographic projector, and there, studying data streams that flowed through the air like luminous rivers, was Dr. Alara Voss. In person, she seemed smaller than her hologram had suggested, but there was an intensity to her that the projection hadn't captured. Her dark hair was streaked with premature silver, pulled back in a simple style that kept it away from her face. She wore practical clothing, a researcher's garb, not a revolutionary's. Thorne observed her from the shadows. The mission parameters were clear. He should eliminate her immediately, then destroy the data. Clean, efficient, final. His hand moved to his weapon muscles, tensing in preparation. "I know you're there," Dr. Voss said, suddenly not looking up from her work. "You might as well come out. Your camouflage is impressive, but it doesn't mask thermal signatures completely." Thorne hesitated, then disengaged his camouflage. He stepped forward, weapon raised. "Dr. Alara Voss, by authority of the Galactic Dominion High Council, you are declared enemy of the established order." Now she looked up, her eyes finding his instantly. There was no fear in them, only a profound sadness that took Thorne by surprise. "An apex predator," she said quietly. "They must be more frightened than I thought. You will come with me to the Shadow Rift." Thorne continued, ignoring her comment. After which you'll kill me and destroy my work," she finished for him. "Yes, I know the protocol. I helped design it, remember?" She gestured to a nearby console. "My file is right there. You've read it, I assume." Thorne didn't answer, but something in his expression must have confirmed it. "Then you know I worked on the Apex Predator program. I helped create what you are." She took a step toward him, seemingly unconcerned by the weapon pointed at her heart. "Do you have a name?" "Commander Thorn." "Not your rank and designation, your name. What did your parents call you before the Dominion took you?" The question hit Thorn like a physical blow. No one had asked him that in... He couldn't remember how long. "That's irrelevant," he said, but his voice lacked the conviction it had held moments ago. "It's the only relevant thing in this room right now," Dr. Voss countered, "because it's at the core of what my research proves, what the Dominion has been suppressing for centuries." Despite his training, despite the mission, Thorn found himself curious. "And what is that exactly?" Dr. Voss smiled slightly. "That humans aren't what they've told us, what they've told you we are. We're not natural predators at all. Quite the opposite." She gestured to the holographic display. "I can show you the evidence. It's right here. All I ask is that you look at it before you decide whether to pull that trigger." Every instinct, every bit of training told Thorn to eliminate the target now. She was trying to manipulate him just as Chancellor Vrex had warned. But something else, something deeper than his training, made him hesitate. "You have 5 minutes," he said finally. The relief on her face was evident. "Thank you." She turned to the central console and began activating various displays. "What do you know about human evolution?" "Commander Baha, humans evolved as pursuit predators on Earth," Thorn recited. "Superior endurance tool use and strategic thinking allowed them to hunt larger prey. These traits made them effective warriors when the Dominion discovered Earth 3 centuries ago." "That's the official history," Dr. Voss agreed. "But it's incomplete at best, deliberate misinformation at worst." She brought up a series of neural scans. "These are comparative brain scans from various species, including humans. Look at the limbic system, particularly these regions associated with emotional processing and social connection." Thorn studied the images. He wasn't a neurologist, but his training included basic understanding of various species' physiologies, knowledge necessary for efficient elimination. Human brains show significantly more development in these regions than any other known sentient species. Dr. Voss continued. "More connections, more complexity. At first, I thought it might be an anomaly in my samples, so I expanded the study secretly, because by then I was beginning to suspect the implications." She brought up more data, hundreds of scans, statistical analyses, comparative studies. The pattern was consistent across all human subjects regardless of background or environment. Humans have an unparalleled capacity for emotional connection, for understanding, and sharing the feelings of others, for empathy. If that were true, Thorn argued, humans would be poor choices for soldiers and assassins. "Exactly," Dr. Voss said, with emphasis. "Which is why the Dominion has gone to such lengths to suppress this aspect of human neurology, the implants, the conditioning. The carefully controlled information, it's all designed to turn you against your own nature." Thorn's hand tightened on his weapon. "This is sedition." "This is truth," she countered. "And I can prove it." She tapped a few commands into the console. "Project Genesis. Access full-spectrum neurological inhibitor data." The display shifted, showing complex schematics that Thorn recognized immediately, the neural implants used in all apex predators, including the one at the base of his own skull. "The implant doesn't just enhance your physical capabilities," Dr. Voss explained. "Its primary function is to suppress specific neural pathways, particularly those associated with empathy and emotional connection. It literally cuts you off from the most human part of yourself." Thorn felt a cold sensation spreading through him that had nothing to do with the planet's temperature. Why would the Dominion do this? Because a species with both our physical capabilities and our capacity for emotional connection would be impossible to control, Dr. Voss said simply. We'd be too unpredictable, too autonomous. The Dominion's entire power structure is built on hierarchy and control. Beings like you, like what you could be without that implant, would threaten everything. You're asking me to believe that my entire existence is based on a lie. Thorne said, his voice hard. That the Dominion has been systematically suppressing human nature for centuries. I'm not asking you to believe it, Dr. Voss replied. I'm showing you the evidence, but there's a more direct way to verify what I'm saying. She reached slowly into a pocket of her lab coat, telegraphing her movements to avoid appearing threatening. Thorne tensed, but allowed her to continue. She withdrew a small device no larger than her palm. This is a neural inhibitor disruptor, she explained. It temporarily blocks the suppression functions of your implant without interfering with the life support aspects. The effect lasts about 10 minutes before the implant's systems compensate and restore full functionality. She held it out to him. Use it. Experience for yourself what it feels like to be fully human, even if just for a few minutes. Then decide whether to kill me. Thorne stared at the device. This was precisely the kind of manipulation Vrex had warned about. But if it was manipulation, why did it feel like the first real choice he'd been offered in his entire life? Slowly, against every protocol, every rule, every aspect of his training, Thorne lowered his weapon. He took the device from her hand. How does it work? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Place it against the base of your skull directly over the implant. Press the activation switch. Her eyes held his. I won't try to escape or call for help. This is your decision, Commander. Thorne hesitated one final moment, then raised the device to his implant. He pressed the switch. Pain flashed through his skull, bright and sudden, followed by a sensation like ice water flowing through his brain. He staggered, dropping to one knee as the world seemed to warp around him. The device fell from his hand, clattering on the floor. And then, everything changed. It wasn't that the world looked different. It was that he experienced it differently. Colors seemed more vivid, sounds more nuanced, but these sensory changes were nothing compared to the emotional tsunami that crashed over him. Feelings he had no names for, connections he'd never imagined understanding, that transcended thought, all flooded through him at once. He looked up at Dr. Voss and for the first time truly saw her. Not as a target, not as an objective, but as a person complex, multifaceted, alive with hopes and fears and determined courage. He saw the fatigue in her eyes, the strain of carrying a truth too heavy for one person. He felt her concern for him, her cautious hope, her fear not for herself, but for what her discoveries meant for countless others. And beyond her, like a psychic shockwave, he sensed the presence of others in the facility, each a unique constellation of emotions and thoughts and memories, all connected in an invisible web of shared experience. How had he never perceived this before? How had he walked through the universe so blind? What is this? He gasped, overwhelmed by the intensity of it all. This is empathy, Dr. Voss said gently. This is what it means to be human, Thorne. Not a predator, but a connector. Our evolutionary advantage was never that we could hunt better than other species. It was that we could understand each other better, work together, better care for each other better. Thorne struggled to integrate this new perception with everything he had believed about himself, about his species. If what he was experiencing was real, and he couldn't imagine how it could be faked, then Dr. Voss was right. The Dominion had systematically suppressed the very essence of humanity. Why? He asked again. But this time the question encompassed so much more. Why this deception? Why use humans as weapons when they were meant for connection? Why had he spent his life killing when he could have been understanding? Power, Dr. Voss answered simply. The founding species of the Dominion discovered Earth when humans were still a relatively young spacefaring civilization. They recognized both our physical capabilities and our empathic potential. The former could be useful to them, the latter frightened them. So they constructed a narrative about human evolution that emphasized our predatory nature and suppressed all evidence of our empathic abilities. She knelt beside him, meeting him at eye level. The Apex Predator program was their crowning achievement, taking human children with the strongest empathic potential and turning them into the very predators they claimed we naturally were, the ultimate proof of their narrative. Thorne felt something wet on his face and reached up to touch it. Tears. He was crying. Another experience his implant had always suppressed. "How many?" he asked. "How many like me?" "Thousands," Dr. Voss said sadly. "And millions more humans living under neural suppression to varying degrees throughout Dominion space. Most don't have implants as sophisticated as yours, but their education, their media, their entire society is designed to minimize empathic connection and emphasize competitive predatory behavior. The enormity of it was almost incomprehensible. An entire species, billions of individuals, living as something other than what they truly were, living as weapons rather than healers, as dangers rather than bridges." Thorne felt something shifting inside him, a fundamental realignment of his understanding of himself and his place in the universe. With it came a resolve unlike anything he'd ever experienced. "The effect will start to fade soon," Dr. Voss warned. "Your implant will adapt to the disruptor's frequency and reassert control. When that happens, you'll feel the empathic connection diminish. Some of this may seem like a dream or a hallucination." "I won't forget," Thorne said with certainty. He rose to his feet, somewhat unsteady, but determined. "What you're doing here, it's more than just research, isn't it?" Dr. Voss nodded. "We're developing ways to permanently disable the suppression aspects of the implants, the mold, without harming the recipients. And we're gathering evidence to present to the wider galactic community outside Dominion control. The truth has to come out, Thorne, for all our sakes." He could feel it already, the cold tendrils of the implant's control seeping back into his mind, trying to reassert the barriers that had defined his existence. But now that he knew they were there, he could resist at least partially. He reached a decision. Thorne walked over to where he had dropped his pulse rifle and picked it up. He saw fear flash across Dr. Voss's face, quickly controlled but unmistakable to his heightened empathic awareness. "I'm not going to hurt you," he assured her. "I can't go back to what I was, not now that I know." With deliberate movements, he placed the weapon on the floor between them. Then, in a gesture that went against everything the Dominion had programmed into him, against the very identity they had constructed for him, Thorne knelt. "I was sent to kill you," he said, looking up at her. "I'm choosing to help you instead. Whatever you're planning, whatever it takes to free humanity from this prison they've built around our minds, I want to be part of it." Dr. Voss's eyes widened, hope and disbelief warring on her face. "You understand what this means. The Dominion will declare you a traitor. They'll send other apex predators after both of us." "Let them come," Thorne said. And for the first time in his life, he smiled, a genuine expression, born not of training or calculation, but of the newfound freedom within him. "We'll show them who they really are, too." As the last of the disruptor's effect faded and the implant reasserted partial control, Thorne felt the vivid connection to others dim like stars obscured by clouds, but it didn't vanish completely. Now that he knew it existed, he could feel it still, a subtle undercurrent beneath the familiar coldness of the implant's influence. He rose from his knees, no longer the perfect weapon the Dominion had crafted, but something new. Something that had never existed before in the long history of the Galactic Dominion. An apex predator who had chosen empathy over obedience, connection over control. "What do we do now?" he asked Dr. Voss. She regarded him thoughtfully. "Now, Commander Thorne, we change the universe." The next 3 days were a blur of activity as Thorne integrated himself into the workings of Dr. Voss's facility. The initial reaction from the other researchers was understandable suspicion. An apex predator suddenly switching sides seemed too convenient, too unlikely. But Dr. Voss vouched for him, and gradually the others began to accept his presence. Thorne learned that the facility housed over 100 researchers and support staff representing 12 different species. All were working toward the same goal, revealing the truth about human empathic capabilities and developing ways to counteract the Dominion's suppression techniques. He also learned more about Dr. Voss herself. She had been one of the Dominion's most brilliant neurologists, responsible for numerous advances in the neural implant technology. But 3 years ago, while studying anomalous brain patterns in a group of human children who showed resistance to the standard emotional suppression protocols, she had stumbled upon the truth. "I couldn't unsee it once I discovered it," she explained as they reviewed her research together. "The patterns were too consistent, the implications too significant. Humans aren't just capable of empathy, we're specialized for it in a way no other known species is." Thorne spent hours in the lab with her learning about the true nature of his own species. He underwent more temporary disruptions of his implant, each time experiencing the rush of connection that was his birthright, and each time finding it a little easier to maintain some of that awareness even after the disruptor's effects faded. "Your brain is creating new neural pathways," Dr. Voss explained, studying scans of his brain activity, bypassing the implant's suppression to some degree. "It's remarkable adaptation." "Will it be enough?" Thorne asked. "When the Dominion realizes I've failed my mission, they'll send others." "Which is why we need to accelerate our timetable," she agreed. "We've been gathering evidence, preparing a case to present to the non-aligned worlds and the galactic scientific community. But with direct testimony from an apex predator, especially one of your standing, that could change everything." Thorne nodded. "Tell me what you need me to do." The plan they developed was audacious. Dr. Voss had contacts in the non-aligned world's independent planetary systems that had refused to join the Dominion. One contact, in particular Ambassador Thelios of the Altair Confederation, had been quietly supportive of her research, providing resources and protection. "If we can get our evidence to Altair Prime, present it to the Confederation Council with you as a living witness, it could force a galactic reckoning," Dr. Voss explained. "The Dominion can suppress information within its borders, but it can't control what the independent worlds do with it. But first, they needed to escape Erebus and make it through Dominion space without being captured or killed. A challenge even for an apex predator. My ship has the most advanced stealth systems in the Dominion," Thorne pointed out. "But it's designed for a single occupant, and the Dominion will be tracking it once they realize I've gone rogue. We have our own ships," offered Talon, a Lumari engineer who had become one of Thorne's first allies among the research team. "Not as advanced as yours, but we've modified them with some unique stealth features. Might be enough to get a small team through Dominion space." "How long before the Dominion sends someone to check on me?" Thorne asked. "Standard protocol for deep cover eliminations is 7 days without contact before a follow-up is initiated," Dr. Voss replied. "We're on day 4. We should assume they'll have someone here by the end of day 7 at the latest. Then we move out on day 6, Thorne decided. Just enough time to prepare, not enough time for them to expect it. The next 2 days were a flurry of preparation. They selected a small team to accompany Dr. Voss to Altair Prime Thorne, obviously, plus Talon for his technical expertise, and a Vixari named Neri, who had extensive experience navigating the complex trade routes that would allow them to avoid major Dominion checkpoints. They loaded one of the facility's modified shuttles with all of Dr. Voss's research data equipment for maintaining Thorne's new neural balance and enough supplies for the journey to Altair Prime. The rest of the research team would evacuate to a secondary facility, their location known only to Dr. Voss. As the final preparations were being made, Thorne found himself drawn to the observation deck of the facility, similar to the one on Nexus Station where this had all begun. Erebus had no spectacular stellar vista to offer, just the dull gray landscape and the distant dim sun that barely provided enough light to distinguish day from night. He sensed someone approaching before he heard them. Another new ability, this subtle awareness of others, even when his implant was functioning normally. "May I join you?" Dr. Voss asked, stopping a respectful distance away. Thorne nodded. I was just thinking about how different everything looks now. Perception shapes reality, she said, coming to stand beside him. Change how you see the world, and you change the world itself. The Dominion won't fall easily, Thorne said after a moment. Even if we succeed in revealing the truth, they've had centuries to build their power. They won't relinquish it over a scientific discovery. No, Dr. Voss agreed. But it's a beginning, a crack in the foundation. And from my research, I've learned that humans are remarkably good at turning small beginnings into profound changes. She smiled slightly. It's another of our evolutionary advantages. Thorne turned to look at her directly. Why did you risk everything for this? You had a prestigious position security influence. Why throw it all away? Her expression grew serious. Because I couldn't be complicit in the suppression of an entire species' true nature. Especially not my own species. She paused. And because I saw what the Dominion was doing to children like you, turning them into weapons when they were meant to be. Something else entirely. What were we meant to be? Thorne asked quietly. I don't know, Dr. Voss admitted. That's the beautiful part. Without the Dominion's interference, humanity would have developed along its own path, found its own purpose. Maybe we still can. A soft chime interrupted them, Talon signaling that the final preparations were complete. It was time to go. As they made their way to the shuttle bay, Thorne felt a strange mixture of emotions. Apprehension about what lay ahead, determination to see this through, and underneath it all, a quiet sense of rightness. For the first time in his life, he was choosing his path rather than following orders. The modified shuttle was sleek and dark, designed to minimize both visual and sensor profiles. Talon was already in the pilot's seat, running through pre-flight checks, while Neri finalized the navigation calculations that would take them through the less traveled regions of space. Are we ready? Dr. Voss asked as she and Thorne boarded. As ready as we'll ever be. Talon replied, his luminescent skin pulsing with nervous energy. I've programmed a random exit vector to mask our true destination, and we'll make 3 short jumps before setting course for the Altair border. Thorne took the co-pilot's seat, his training in spacecraft operation, making him the logical choice to assist Talon. As he familiarized himself with the controls, an alert sounded from the facility's security system. We've got incoming. Neri reported, her multiple eyes fixing on the sensor display. Single-ship Dominion configuration approaching fast. Thorne felt a cold certainty settle over him. They're early. How? Dr. Voss demanded. We should have had at least another day. Someone must have informed them, Thorne said grimly. Or they were suspicious enough to send an early check. It doesn't matter now. We need to leave immediately. Talon accelerated the launch sequence, the shuttle's engines humming to life. But they all knew they wouldn't be fast enough. The Dominion ship would be within visual range before they could clear the atmosphere. They'll track us, Neri said, stating what they all knew. Even with our stealth modifications, a direct pursuit will pick up our trail. Thorne made a quick decision. Get Dr. Voss and the research to Altair. That's the priority. I'll create a diversion. What kind of diversion? Dr. Voss asked, though her expression suggested she already knew. My ship? Thorne explained. The Shadow Rift. It's still where I landed it. If I can reach it, I can lead the Dominion forces away from your escape vector. That's suicide, Talon objected. Once they realize you've defected, they'll throw everything they have at you. I'm an apex predator, Thorne said with a grim smile. Staying ahead of pursuit is what I was trained for. Dr. Voss studied him intently. You don't have to do this. Yes, Thorne said softly. I do, because now I understand what you've been trying to tell me. Being human isn't about being the perfect predator. It's about connection, about protecting those connections, even at a cost to yourself. He touched the implant at the base of his skull. They tried to make us forget that. I won't forget again. There was no time for prolonged goodbyes. Thorne took minimal supplies and a disruptor for his implant. As he prepared to disembark, Dr. Voss caught his arm. "Find us," she said, "when you've lost them. The coordinates for Altair Prime are in this." She pressed a small data chip into his hand. "We'll wait for you." Thorn nodded, knowing that the chances of him surviving long enough to use those coordinates were slim. But for the first time, he had something worth fighting for beyond mere survival or mission parameters. He had truth. He had purpose. "May your path be clear." Neri offered a traditional Vexari blessing for travelers. "And may your light never dim," Talon added, touching his luminescent palm briefly to Thorn's shoulder, a gesture of respect among the Lumari. Dr. Voss said nothing more, but her eyes conveyed what words could not. Understanding, gratitude, hope. Thorn left the shuttle and moved quickly through the facility toward the exit. Behind him, he heard the shuttle's engines power up to full capacity. Good. They wouldn't wait for him to reach the Shadow Rift before departing. Time was too precious. He emerged onto the barren surface of Erebus just in time to see the Dominion ship on final approach, a Hunter-class patrol vessel heavily armed and built for pursuit. Perfect for capturing or killing a rogue apex predator. Thorn didn't wait to see if they had spotted him. He activated the full range of his augmentations, feeling the familiar surge of strength and speed as his implant channeled extra energy to his muscles. He began to run, pushing himself to the limits of even his enhanced physiology. The 3 kilometers to the Shadow Rift would take a normal human over an hour to traverse in this terrain. Thorn would do it in 10 minutes. Behind him, he heard the roar of the research shuttle's engines as it launched, taking a low trajectory to use the mountains as cover for as long as possible. Ahead, he saw the narrow canyon where he had concealed the Shadow Rift. And above the Dominion ship altered course, its sensors having detected the shuttle's launch. Thorn needed to move faster. He pushed himself harder, ignoring the burn in his muscles, the strain on his lungs in the thin atmosphere. The distance closed rapidly, the canyon entrance growing larger with each powerful stride. He heard the distinctive whine of the Dominion ship's weapon systems powering up. They were preparing to fire on the shuttle. He was out of time. Reaching the Shadow Rift. Thorn slammed his palm against the access panel. The ship recognized his biometric signature, and the entry ramp descended. He was inside and activating systems before it had fully closed behind him. The Shadow Rift was designed for rapid deployment, its systems capable of going from cold start to full operation in seconds. Thorn guided it out of the canyon, pushing the engines immediately to maximum thrust. The ship responded instantly, shooting upward toward the Dominion vessel. He opened a communication channel on the standard Dominion frequency. "Hunter-class patrol vessel, this is Commander Thorn. The target has escaped. I am in pursuit. Do not interfere." There was a moment of silence, then a response. "Commander Thorn, this is Captain Vex of the Dominion vessel, Relentless. Our orders are to verify your status and the completion of your mission. My mission parameters have changed." Thorn replied, improvising. "The target had valuable Dominion intelligence that must be recovered intact. I am pursuing. Acknowledge and stand down, Captain." Another pause. Thorn knew they would be verifying his identity checking with Dominion Command. It wouldn't hold for long, but he only needed a few minutes, just enough time for the research shuttle to get clear. "Commander, our orders are to..." Thorn cut the communication and banked the Shadow Rift sharply, bringing its weapons systems online. He had no intention of actually engaging the Dominion vessel. That would be suicide, but the threat might buy precious seconds of confusion. It worked. The Dominion ship hesitated, its captain clearly uncertain whether to treat Thorn as an ally or a threat. In that moment of indecision, Thorn detected the research shuttle breaking atmosphere on the far side of the mountain range. Now for the diversion. Thorn sent the Shadow Rift into a steep climb directly above the Dominion vessel, then cut its main engines and activated the maneuvering thrusters in a pattern that simulated a systems failure. The ship tumbled, appearing to be in distress. "Mayday," he broadcast. "Systems failure, losing control." The Dominion vessel moved to intercept, either to assist or to capture. It didn't matter which they intended. What mattered was that their attention was focused entirely on him, not on the smaller, stealthier shuttle now accelerating away from Erebus. As the Dominion ship drew near, Thorn reactivated the main engines at full power, shooting past the larger vessel with barely meters to spare. The sudden maneuver would confirm to them that he had gone rogue, but by the time they recovered and gave pursuit, he would have a significant lead. The Shadow Rift's stealth systems engaged automatically as it reached escape velocity, rendering it nearly invisible to standard sensors. Thorn plotted a course that would lead the Dominion forces away from the path the research shuttle would take to Altair Prime. As the stars streaked past his view screen, Thorn felt a complex mixture of emotions that would have been alien to him just days before. Fear, yes, but also exhilaration, determination, hope, and underneath it all, a profound sense of connection, not just to Dr. Voss and the others he had left behind, but to something larger, to the truth of what humanity could be. The Dominion had created him to be the perfect predator, a weapon aimed at anyone who threatened their power. But in that moment, when he had dropped his weapon and knelt before Dr. Alara Voss, he had become something else entirely. Not a predator, but a protector. Not a weapon, but a witness. Not an apex, but a beginning. And as the Shadow Rift carried him into the vast darkness between the stars, with the full might of the Galactic Dominion, soon to be in pursuit, Thorn made a silent promise to Dr. Voss, to himself, to every human whose true nature had been suppressed for generations. This was just the beginning. The truth would spread, and the universe would never be the same. The news of Thorn's defection spread quickly through the ranks of the apex predators. At first, it was treated as classified information, shared only among commanders and the High Council. But secrets have a way of escaping containment, especially secrets that challenge the very foundations of established power. Rumor became whispered conversation. Whispers became questions. Questions became doubt. On Nexus Station, Chancellor Vrex convened an emergency session of the Dominion High Council. The chamber was sealed, guards posted at every entrance, all recording devices disabled. "This is unprecedented," Counselor Mira stated, her luminescent skin pulsing with agitation. "An apex predator has never defected before. The programming is supposed to be foolproof." "It is foolproof," Chancellor Vrex insisted. "This is not a failure of programming. This is corruption. Dr. Voss found a way to interfere with the neural implant's functionality." "The question," said Counselor Draz, a Vexari representative, "is how many others might be vulnerable to similar corruption." The implication hung heavy in the air. If one apex predator could break conditioning, others might follow. And if the truth about human neurology became widely known, the carefully constructed narrative that had kept humanity controlled for centuries would collapse. "We need to contain this," Chancellor Vrex declared. "All apex predators are to be recalled for immediate neural evaluation and implant recalibration. Increase surveillance in human population centers. And most importantly, find Thorn and Dr. Voss. They must be eliminated before they can spread their sedition further." "And if they've already made contact with the non-aligned worlds?" Counselor Mira asked. Chancellor Vrex's scaled face hardened. "Then we may be looking at the first interstellar conflict in 300 years. But make no mistake, we cannot allow the truth to emerge. The consequences would be unacceptable." As the Dominion marshaled its forces to hunt down the defector and the scientist, the Shadow Rift continued its dangerous journey through the outer reaches of Dominion space. Thorn had maintained his lead on the immediate pursuit, using the ship's superior stealth capabilities and his intimate knowledge of Dominion protocols to stay one step ahead. But he knew it was only a matter of time. The Dominion was committing more resources to the hunt with each passing day. Patrol routes were being altered. Checkpoints, strengthened informants, activated throughout the border regions. The net was tightening. On the 10th day after leaving Erebus, Thorn made a difficult decision. The Shadow Rift was too recognizable, too closely associated with the Apex Predator program. Even with its stealth systems, it was becoming a liability. He needed to change tactics. He plotted a course for Helios 7, a mining colony on the edge of Dominion space, known for its black markets and lax security. If anywhere in the Dominion would offer the opportunity to disappear and find alternative transportation, it was Helios 7. The colony was a sprawling complex of habitation domes and industrial facilities built around and into a massive asteroid. Originally established for mineral extraction, it had evolved over decades into a haven for those seeking to avoid Dominion. Attention smugglers, traders in restricted goods, political dissidents, and others who operated in the shadows of galactic society. Thorn landed the Shadow Rift in a remote area of the asteroid's surface, far from the main settlement. After setting the ship's self-destruct sequence on a delay, he gathered what supplies he could carry and made his way toward the colony on foot. The environmental suit he wore was standard issue, unmarked and indistinguishable from thousands of others used by workers throughout the mining colonies. With the hood up and the reflective faceplate engaged, his identity was completely concealed. Helios 7's main settlement was a chaotic maze of tunnels, chambers, and jury-rigged structures that had grown organically over generations. Its population was as diverse as any in Dominion space, humans working alongside, Vexari, Lumari, Draxians, and numerous other species, all bound together by the common desire to be left alone by central authority. Thorn moved through the crowded thoroughfares with practiced anonymity, just another faceless worker in the endless shift changes. His enhanced senses allowed him to monitor his surroundings for any sign of Dominion agents or unusual attention. His first priority was to find transport off the asteroid. His second was to make contact with Dr. Voss if possible. The data chip she had given him contained encrypted coordinates for Altair Prime, but also a secure communication protocol, a way to reach her once he was clear of Dominion space. The spaceport, such as it was, consisted of a series of large docking bays carved into the asteroid, servicing everything from small personal craft to mid-sized cargo haulers. No large military or passenger vessels came to Helios 7. The colony wasn't considered important enough for regular service. Thorn observed the port operations for several hours, noting which ships were preparing for departure and which seemed to have settled in for longer stays. He needed a vessel bound for the border, preferably one whose captain wouldn't ask too many questions of a last-minute passenger willing to pay well. His attention was drawn to a cargo hauler showing signs of imminent departure crew, loading the last of the supply systems being brought online. The ship was old, but well-maintained, its design suggesting it had been built for speed as well as cargo capacity. Ideal for a captain who occasionally needed to outrun customs inspections. As Thorn considered how to approach the vessel's captain, he became aware of a subtle change in the port's atmosphere. The usual chaotic energy was being replaced by something more focused, more directed. Workers were moving with slightly too much purpose, communicating via subtle gestures rather than the usual shouted exchanges. Dominion agents. They had to be. They were conducting a search pattern, trying to be inconspicuous, but betrayed by their too perfect coordination. Thorn adjusted his plans immediately. The cargo hauler was too obvious a target. Now the agents would be checking all outgoing vessels. He needed an alternative, and quickly. He noticed a service door near one of the smaller docking bays, partially obscured by stacked cargo containers. Moving casually, he made his way toward it, timing his approach to coincide with a shift in the agent's search pattern that left the area momentarily unobserved. The door led to a maintenance tunnel dimly lit, and clearly not meant for regular traffic. Thorn moved quickly through it, following the sound of machinery that suggested active ship systems. The tunnel eventually opened into a small private docking bay, the kind reserved for colony officials or wealthy private operators. A sleek courier ship sat ready for departure, its engines cycling through pre-flight checks. The vessel was small, designed for speed, and minimal crew requirements, exactly what Thorn needed. But approaching it directly would be risky. The owner would likely have security systems, possibly armed guards. Thorne weighed his options, then heard voices approaching from the main port area, the Dominion agents expanding their search. He was out of time for subtlety. He moved toward the ship, keeping to the shadows, until he was close enough to see that there was a single figure in the cockpit, the pilot running through final checks. No visible guards, though that didn't mean there weren't automated security systems. Thorne made a split-second decision. He approached the ship openly, walking up the loading ramp as if he belonged there. The element of surprise might work in his favor, at least long enough to explain himself. The pilot looked up as Thorne entered the cockpit, a human woman, middle-aged, with the confident bearing of someone who had spent decades navigating both space and its many dangers. "You're not authorized to be here," she said calmly, her hand moving subtly toward what Thorne assumed was a weapon. "I apologize for the intrusion," Thorne replied, keeping his hands visible and his posture non-threatening. "But I need passage off this asteroid immediately. I can pay." The woman's eyes narrowed. "Not interested. Exit my ship now, or things get unpleasant." Thorne could hear the Dominion agents getting closer. There are Dominion agents searching the port. They'll be here within minutes. That got her attention. "Dominion here." Her expression hardened. "What did you do to bring them to Helios 7? "It's not what I did," Thorne said. "It's what I know. Information that could change everything about how the Dominion maintains control, especially over humans." The woman studied him for a long moment, clearly weighing her options. Finally, she sighed. "You're either insane or important enough to be worth the risk. Either way, you've made my day a lot more complicated." She gestured to the co-pilot's seat. "Sit, strap in, and if you make any threatening moves, I'll vent you into space without a second thought." Thorne complied, immediately securing himself in the co-pilot's seat as the woman accelerated the launch sequence. "I'm Captain Kira," she said, her attention focused on the controls. "This is my ship, the Whisper. We'll be breaking atmosphere in approximately 2 minutes, at which point you're going to tell me exactly why the Dominion is so interested in you." The Whisper lifted off smoothly, its engines surprisingly quiet for the acceleration they provided. Captain Kira guided it through the asteroid's irregular gravity field with practiced ease, clearly familiar with every quirk of Helios 7's approach and departure vectors. "Automated clearance received," she noted. "They haven't raised an alarm yet. Must be trying to keep their presence quiet." She glanced at Thorne. "Start talking." Thorne considered how much to reveal. Captain Kira was human, which might make her more sympathetic to his cause. But she had survived this long in the outer colonies, precisely because she was cautious about getting involved in matters that might attract Dominion attention. "My name is Thorne," he began. "Until recently, I was an apex predator working for the Dominion." Captain Kira's hands froze momentarily on the controls, then resumed their precise movements. "An apex predator," she repeated. "On my ship." "Fantastic." "Former apex predator," Thorne corrected. "I defected after learning certain truths about humanity that the Dominion has been suppressing for centuries." "And what truths would those be?" Captain Kira asked skeptically. "That humans aren't the natural predators the Dominion has always claimed we are. That our true evolutionary advantage is empathy, not aggression. And that the Dominion has been systematically suppressing that aspect of human neurology to maintain control over us." Captain Kira was silent for a long moment, guiding the ship away from the asteroid and toward open space. Finally, she said, "That's not entirely surprising, actually." It was Thorne's turn to be surprised. "You suspected this?" "Not specifically," she admitted. "But anyone who operates outside the Dominion's direct control for long enough starts to notice certain patterns. The way human settlements under Dominion influence are always more aggressive, more isolated than independent human colonies. The way the Dominion encourages certain traits in humans and suppresses others." She shrugged. "Most of us just assumed it was cultural engineering, not neurological manipulation." A warning light flashed on the console. Captain Kira frowned. "Looks like your friends noticed your absence." We've got a patrol vessel changing course to intercept. Thorne looked at the tactical display. The patrol vessel was still at extreme range, but it was faster than the Whisper. Can we outrun them? Not conventionally, Captain Kira said, a small smile playing at the corners of her mouth. But the Whisper has a few non-standard modifications. Hold tight. She engaged a sequence of commands, and the ship's engine tone changed subtly. The stars outside the view screen began to blur. Transit jump in 3, 2, 1. The universe seemed to twist around them, space itself folding in ways that defied conventional perception. Thorne felt a momentary disorientation, and then everything snapped back to normal. The stars reappeared, but in a completely different configuration. What was that? He asked, genuinely impressed. Microjump drive, Captain Kira explained. Highly illegal, extremely expensive, and absolute murder on the power cells. But it gets you out of tight spots when standard FTL would take too long to calculate and engage. Thorne checked the tactical display again. No sign of pursuit. Where are we? About half a light year from Helios 7 in a direction they wouldn't expect us to go. She adjusted their course. Now, where exactly are you trying to get to? Because if it's anywhere in Dominion space, you're out of luck. They'll have alerts on every checkpoint and port by now. Altair Prime, Thorne said, in the non-aligned worlds. Captain Kira whistled. Ambitious. That's at least a week's journey from here, even pushing the engines hard. And we'd have to cross a significant stretch of Dominion space to get there. I have coordinates. Thorne offered, producing the data chip Dr. Voss had given him, and I can pay well for the risk. Let me see those coordinates, Captain Kira said, taking the chip and inserting it into her navigation system. She studied the resulting display, then nodded slowly. Interesting route. Takes advantage of some navigational blind spots in the Dominion's sensor network. Your friend knows what they're doing. She's a scientist, Thorne explained. Dr. Elara Voss. She's the one who discovered the truth about human neurology. And she's on Altair Prime now. If she made it, Thorne said, unable to keep the concern from his voice. I created a diversion to allow her ship to escape Erebus, but I don't know if they reached Altair safely. Captain Kira considered him thoughtfully. You care about her. That's not what I would expect from an apex predator. That's the point, Thorne said simply. We've been conditioned to suppress empathy connection, but it's still there, still part of us. Dr. Voss helped me see that. To his surprise, Captain Kira laughed. Well, if the Dominion's perfect weapon can learn to care, maybe there's hope for the rest of us after all. She set the Whisper on a course that matched the first leg of the route from the data chip. Altair Prime it is, but be warned, this won't be a direct journey. We'll need to make stops for supplies and to avoid Dominion patrols, and I expect payment in advance. Thorne offered what Dominion currency he had, plus several valuable components he had salvaged from the Shadow Rift before abandoning it. Captain Kira examined them critically, then nodded her acceptance. One more thing, she added. While you're on my ship, you follow my rules. No violence, unless absolutely necessary for our survival. I don't care what you were trained to do on the Whisper. We handle things differently. Understood? Thorne agreed. He hesitated, then added thank you. Captain Kira raised an eyebrow. Don't thank me yet. We still have to get you to Altair Prime alive, and that's going to be quite the challenge. She began programming a more detailed flight plan. Get some rest while you can. Once we hit the border regions, things will get interesting. As Thorne settled into a jump seat behind the cockpit, he reflected on how quickly his life had changed. 2 weeks ago, he had been the perfect apex predator, unquestioning in his loyalty to the Dominion. Now he was a fugitive racing across space with a smuggler carrying information that could fundamentally change humanity's place in the galaxy. And for the first time in his life, he felt truly alive. The journey to Altair Prime was, indeed, as challenging as Captain Kira had predicted. They made 3 stops at remote outposts to refuel and gather intelligence on Dominion patrol patterns. Twice they had to alter course to avoid detection. Once, they had to hide in the atmosphere of a gas giant for nearly 2 days, the Whisper's systems powered down to minimal life support, while a Dominion cruiser conducted a sector-wide sweep. But Captain Kira proved to be as skilled a pilot as she had claimed, and Thorne's training allowed him to anticipate Dominion tactics. Slowly, carefully, they made their way closer to the border, beyond which lay the non-aligned worlds. During the long hours between crisis points, Thorne and Captain Kira established an unexpected rapport. She shared stories of her decades navigating the edges of Dominion space, smuggling everything from luxury goods to political refugees. He, in turn, gradually revealed more about his life as an apex predator and his awakening to the truth about human nature. "So this Dr. Voss," Captain Kira said during one such conversation, "she believes that humans evolved primarily for empathy rather than hunting." "The evidence is compelling," Thorne replied. "Our brains show significantly more development in regions associated with emotional processing and social connection than any other known species. The Dominion has been suppressing this through neural implants conditioning, even controlling human society to emphasize competition over cooperation. And what happens if this information gets out? If humans throughout Dominion space learn they've been essentially neurologically hobbled?" Thorne considered the question. Best case, a peaceful transition to a more equitable relationship between humans and other species. Worst case, revolution, war, chaos. Captain Kira nodded thoughtfully. "And which do you think is more likely?" "I don't know," Thorne admitted. "But I do know that continuing as we have been living a lie serving as the Dominion's weapons isn't an option anymore. Not for me, at least." On the final day of their journey, they approached the border between Dominion space and the non-aligned worlds. The boundary wasn't marked by any physical barrier, just an invisible line where one set of laws ended and another began. But crossing it would mean the difference between being hunted fugitives and potential political refugees. Final approach. Captain Kira announced her focus entirely on the navigation and sensor displays. "Border checkpoint ahead. Standard procedure is to transmit identification and cargo. Manifest, then submit to a scan. The Dominion will have flags on all checkpoint systems," Thorne warned. "Any human male matching my description, or any mention of Altair Prime as a destination, will trigger an alert." "Who said anything about using the checkpoint?" Captain Kira grinned. "We're going to slip past it. See that asteroid field?" She pointed to a dense cluster of space debris near the border. Perfect cover for a ship with the right stealth systems. She guided the Whisper toward the asteroid field, powering down all non-essential systems to minimize their energy signature. As they drew closer, Thorne could see the checkpoint itself, a Dominion station, orbiting a small moon, with patrol vessels making regular sweeps of the approach vectors. "They're thorough," he observed. "Those patrol patterns don't leave many blind spots." "They don't need to leave any," Captain Kira replied. "Most ships can't navigate an asteroid field safely at the speeds we'll need to maintain. But then, most ships don't have my modifications or my piloting skills." She activated a series of controls and the Whisper's stealth systems engaged fully. The ship seemed to become one with the darkness of space, its outline blurring its energy emissions, scattered and diffused until they were indistinguishable from background radiation. "Hold on," Captain Kira warned. "This is going to be precise." She sent the Whisper diving into the asteroid field, weaving between the tumbling masses of rock and ice with incredible skill. Thorne watched in admiration. Even with his enhanced reflexes, he doubted he could have managed such delicate control at these speeds. A proximity alert sounded. One of the patrol vessels had altered course, moving closer to their position. "They've detected something," Thorne said tensely. "Not us specifically, but something that doesn't fit their expected patterns." "Then we changed the pattern," Captain Kira replied. She adjusted their course, bringing them dangerously close to a large asteroid. For a moment, It seemed they would collide with it, but at the last possible second, she used its gravity to slingshot the Whisper along a new vector. The patrol vessel continued its sweep, moving away from their position. Captain Kira didn't relax, maintaining her focus as she navigated through the densest part of the field. Asteroids filled the view screen, seemingly leaving no path forward, but somehow she found safe passage through the chaos. And then suddenly they were clear. The asteroid field fell behind them, and ahead lay open space and the territory of the non-aligned worlds. "We made it," Captain Kira confirmed, checking their position against the navigation charts. "Welcome to Free Space, Commander." Thorn felt a weight lift from his shoulders. "Not Commander anymore," he reminded her. "Just Thorn." "Well, just Thorn," she said with a smile. "We're about 6 hours from Altair Prime at standard cruising speed. Want to send a message ahead to your Dr. Voss?" Thorn nodded. The data chip has a secure communication protocol. As they established the connection, Thorn found himself unexpectedly nervous. What if Dr. Voss hadn't made it to Altair Prime? What if the Dominion had captured her? What if the communication terminal chimed, indicating an accepted connection. A moment later, Dr. Ilara Voss's face appeared on the screen. "Thorn?" Her voice was a mixture of disbelief and hope. "Is it really you?" "It's me," he confirmed, feeling a surge of relief so powerful it was almost physical. "I'm on my way to Altair Prime. Should arrive within 6 hours. "How did you—" she began, then shook her head. "No, tell me when you get here. The important thing is you're alive." Her expression grew serious. "The Dominion has been hunting for you extensively. They've even sent other apex predators." "I expected as much," Thorn replied. "But I made it through, and I'm not alone." He gestured to Captain Kira, who nodded a greeting to Dr. Voss. "Captain Kira of the Whisper." She introduced herself. "Your friend here has had quite the journey." "I can imagine," Dr. Voss said. "Thank you for bringing him safely." "He's not safe yet," Captain Kira cautioned. "Not until he's on Altair Prime, with whatever protection the Confederation can provide." "We've been granted provisional asylum," Dr. Voss explained. "The Confederation Council is reviewing my research. They're cautiously interested, let's say. Having an actual apex predator to support our claims will make a significant difference." Thorn nodded. "I'll tell them everything. About the implants, the conditioning, all of it. Be careful on your approach to Altair Prime," Dr. Voss warned. "The Dominion has been sending diplomatic protests about harboring terrorists. They haven't taken direct action yet, but they might make an exception for a defecting apex predator," Thorn finished. "Understood. We'll maintain full stealth until we're in Confederation space." "I'll send landing coordinates for a secure facility," Dr. Voss said. "Ambassador Thalios has arranged for a security detail to meet you." She hesitated, then added, "I'm glad you made it, Thorn. When you didn't follow us from Erebus, I feared the worst." "So did I," he admitted. "But it seems I'm harder to kill than the Dominion expected." Dr. Voss smiled. "Good. I'll see you soon." The communication ended, and Thorn sat back processing the emotions that the brief exchange had stirred in him. Relief, certainly. Anticipation. And something else. Something warmer that he was still learning to identify. "She seems nice," Captain Kira observed casually, "for someone who's trying to upend the entire galactic order." Thorn found himself smiling. "She is. Nice, brilliant, and braver than anyone I've ever known." Captain Kira gave him a knowing look. "You know, for someone whose empathy was supposedly suppressed, you seem to have developed quite an attachment. Is that a problem?" "Not at all," she replied. "In fact, it might be the most hopeful thing I've seen in years." She adjusted their course slightly. "If an apex predator can learn to care, maybe there's hope for all of us after all." The Whisper continued its journey toward Altair Prime, carrying with it not just a defector and his revolutionary knowledge, but perhaps the beginning of a new understanding between humans and the wider galaxy. The truth that had been suppressed for centuries was about to emerge into the light, and nothing would ever be the same again. It wasn't a weapon that changed the universe, not a warship or a planet killer, or any of the instruments of destruction that the Dominion had perfected over centuries of rule. It was a human who knelt. The story would be told and retold across 100 worlds, growing with each telling, transforming from news to legend to myth. But at its core, the truth remained simple and profound. They ordered the apex predator to kill her. He dropped his weapon and kneeled instead. And in that moment of defiance and surrender, of rejection and choice, the foundations of an empire began to crumble. The truth spread, first as a whisper, then as a flood. Humans, throughout Dominion space, learned that they had been living as something less than themselves, their capacity for connection and empathy systematically suppressed. The non-human species of the galaxy discovered that their fear of humanity had been carefully engineered, a tool of control, rather than a necessary precaution. The Dominion fought back, of course. They denounced Dr. Voss's research as fraudulent, Thorne's testimony as the ravings of a malfunctioning weapon. They increased the suppression of human populations, tightened their control, sent more apex predators to silence the voices of truth. But the truth had a power all its own. More humans began to question, to resist, to find ways to disrupt their neural suppression. More apex predators began to doubt, to hesitate, to defy. And among the non-human species of the Dominion, voices began to rise in support of change, of honest coexistence, based on truth rather than fear. It wasn't a revolution, won in a day or a year or even a decade. It was a slow awakening, a gradual transformation. But it was unstoppable once begun. And at the center of it all stood a scientist who had dared to question, and a predator who had dared to kneel. Dr. Alara Voss and Thorne, symbols of what humanity could be when freed from the chains of suppression and fear. They never claimed to have all the answers for what would come next. The path forward was uncertain, the challenges immense. But for the first time in centuries, it was truly a path of their own choosing. And that made all the difference.